Welcome to my channel. Today, I want to share with you a story about a family torn apart by a secret love, a betrayal that no one saw coming, and the tough choices we make when loyalty and love collide. Let's dive right into it. I used to think that once you found someone who truly understood you, the world would fall into place. That love, real love, would make everything easier. That your family, even if they didn't quite get it at first, would eventually come around because they love you. But life doesn't follow a script. And love, it has a funny way of exposing the cracks you didn't even know were there. My name is Elena. I'm 32 years old, a freelance interior designer, and up until a few months ago, I thought I had everything figured out. I live in Seattle with my fiancée, Sophia, and we've been together for 4 amazing years. She's thoughtful, brilliant, and the kind of person who remembers the names of every barista at our neighborhood cafe. The kind of woman who brings flowers to my mom on her birthday, even though she lives out of state. The kind of woman I never believed I deserved, until she walked into my life and refused to leave. Even when I tried to push her away. We met at an art exhibition. I was there alone, sipping bad wine and pretending to admire abstract pieces that made zero sense to me, when she struck up a conversation about the color palettes being emotionally dishonest. I laughed, really laughed, and she smiled like that was exactly what she wanted. Within months, we moved in together. We traveled, we adopted a grumpy rescue cat named Moose, and somehow, somewhere along the way, the version of life I had once only dreamed of became my reality. But dreams have a way of cracking. It started with a dinner, not just any dinner. The dinner, the one where Sophia and I invited my parents and my younger brother, Lucas, over to share our big news. We were engaged. I'd rehearsed it in my head dozens of times. Even stood in front of the mirror practicing how I'd casually drop the word fiancé like it was no big deal. My parents had come a long way. When I came out at 19, they were distant, confused, and borderline cold. But over the years, with therapy, family dinners, and time, they thawed. Now, my mom asks about Sophia every time we talk, and my dad sends her weird memes and dad jokes via text. Lucas, though, he was different. Lucas is 2 years younger than me, smart, witty, charming when he wants to be, but always somewhat distant. We used to be inseparable growing up. He was the kind of little brother who'd sneak into my room during thunderstorms, or call me Lenny because he couldn't pronounce Elena properly. But after I came out, there was a shift, subtle at first. He never said anything mean. He never fought me on it. But his silence, it was loud. Still, I thought time had healed things. So there we were, the 5 of us, seated around my dining table. Sophia had made lasagna from scratch, her signature comfort dish, and I had lit enough candles to make the place look like a Pinterest ad. Everything was perfect, or so I thought. After dinner, while we were nibbling on tiramisu and sipping wine, I stood up, my hands slightly shaking. Sophia gave me a reassuring smile, and I felt her hand slide into mine under the table. "We wanted to share something with you," I said, heart pounding. "Sophia and we're getting married." There was a pause. My mom gasped and covered her mouth with her hands. "Oh my God! Really? That's... wow." My dad blinked. "Well, it's about damn time." Everyone laughed, except Lucas. He looked at us like we had said something absurd. His fork froze midair, a piece of tiramisu still balanced on it. Then he slowly set it down. "Congrats," he said flatly. Something in my chest tightened. Maybe it was the lack of warmth in his voice. Maybe it was the way his eyes didn't meet mine. Or maybe, deep down, I'd always known there was something off. Later that night, after my parents had left and Sophia had gone to bed early with a headache, I found Lucas on the balcony, smoking a cigarette he swore he'd quit. "You okay?" I asked, leaning on the railing beside him. He didn't answer right away, just exhaled slowly, eyes fixed on the city skyline. Then he said something that knocked the air out of my lungs. "She doesn't belong to you." I blinked. "What?" "Sophia, she's not... you're not right for her." There was no mistaking the bitterness in his voice. "What the hell are you talking about?" "Lucas, I asked, my voice low but sharp. He finally looked at me, and I saw it. That strange, raw expression in his eyes. A mix of longing, resentment, and something else I couldn't quite name. "I've been in love with her since the day you introduced us," he said. I thought I had misheard him. I stared at Lucas, waiting for a smirk, a shrug, some sign that he was joking. But there was no smirk, just silence, and that unbearable weight hanging between us like a storm cloud seconds before it breaks. "You're in love with Sophia," I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. Lucas looked away, took another drag, and nodded once. "Yeah," I laughed, dry, humorless. "You've barely spoken more than 10 words to her since we started dating." "Because it hurts," he snapped, voice cracking for the first time. "Every time I see her with you, it fucking hurts." The wind picked up around us, but I felt nothing. No cold, no air. Just this sudden drop into some parallel universe where my brother, the same brother who barely acknowledged my relationship, was secretly harboring feelings for my fiancée. I tried to piece it together, rewind every moment, every glance he might have stolen, every conversation that might have hinted at more. I came up empty. "How long?" I asked, my tone sharp now. "Since the first dinner, remember. That Thai place downtown with the tacky elephant statue in the window? 3 years ago." He nodded. "Yeah, I saw her and—" He closed his eyes. "I just knew—" "No, Lucas. You didn't just know. She was with me. I introduced you to her as my girlfriend. I thought it was a phase." I flinched. A phase. He realized what he said, looked horrified, and shook his head. "No, I didn't mean it like that. I meant, I thought maybe she wasn't serious, that she'd move on. But then you moved in together, and I just kept waiting, hoping." I wanted to scream, throw something, anything to drown out the storm inside me. But I stood still, staring at the skyline, trying to anchor myself. "She's not yours, Lucas," I said finally. "She never was. She chose me. She loves me, but she doesn't know what I could give her," he said quietly. "She's never even looked at me that way, because you've been in the way from the start." I turned toward him, eyes blazing. "Do you hear yourself right now? I'm your sister, and you're telling me I'm in the way. This isn't some teenage love triangle, Lucas. This is my life, my future." His jaw clenched. "You're not even supposed to—" He stopped himself. "What?" I challenged. "Go ahead, say it." He looked at me, pain twisting his face. "You're not even supposed to get this. You got everything. The love, the family support, the perfect relationship, and I'm just the screw-up who can't even keep a job. That's not Sophia's fault, and it's sure as hell not mine. I needed something to believe in." Illy, his voice cracked. I needed her. And there it was, the raw, ugly truth. Lucas wasn't just in love. He was drowning in everything he thought he lacked. And Sophia, she was the lifeline he believed he deserved, but never had the courage to reach for. I didn't say anything else. I just walked away. That night, I curled up beside Sophia in bed, trying to feel warmth in a space that had suddenly gone cold. I didn't tell her what Lucas said. Not yet. I needed to sort through the chaos first, to figure out what to do with the bomb he'd dropped. Over the next few days, Lucas didn't call, didn't text. I figured he was embarrassed, or maybe just giving me space. But the silence gnawed at me. I kept going over it all, his words, his tone, the look in his eyes. And the question that haunted me most wasn't about his love for Sophia. It was this: how long had I been blind to it? Then came the family brunch. My mom called to invite us all to a Sunday brunch at her place. "Just a little post-engagement celebration," she said cheerily. I hesitated. "Is Lucas going?" "Of course. Why wouldn't he?" I wanted to say because he confessed his love for my fiancé and implied our relationship was invalid. But instead I said, "We'll be there." Sophia wore her floral sundress, the one that always made her look like she belonged in a field of wildflowers. She was radiant, happy, humming in the passenger seat as I drove us to my parents' house. I kept stealing glances at her, trying to see what Lucas saw. But all I saw was home. She was my person, mine. Lucas was already there when we arrived, sitting stiffly at the table, dressed too formally for a backyard brunch. He avoided my eyes. Sophia greeted him with a warm hug, completely unaware of the undertow beneath our smiles. Throughout the brunch, he barely spoke. When he did, it was clipped, forced, and every time Sophia laughed, I saw the tension in his shoulders grow tighter. After dessert, I pulled him aside. We need to talk. Soon. He nodded, but didn't meet my eyes. Yeah, we do. And we did. Just not in the way I expected. Later that night, Sophia found a letter in our mailbox. No name on the front. Just a folded page tucked into an envelope. It was from Lucas. She read it out loud until her voice faltered. I've loved you from afar for so long, and I know you may never feel the same. But if there's even a small part of you that wonders what could have been, I'm here. She turned to me, pale, confused. What is this? I took the letter from her trembling hands and read it again, each word sinking into my chest like stones in water. I didn't know, she whispered. I believed her. Of course I did. But something inside me had cracked open, and it wasn't going to be easy to put back together. The silence in our apartment after Sophia read the letter felt like it could break glass. She was sitting on the edge of the couch, the letter still in her lap, her hands trembling just slightly, so subtle that no one else might notice. But I did. I noticed everything about her. I paced. The anger hadn't quite hit yet. It was like standing on a beach, watching the tide slowly pull back, knowing the wave was coming but not knowing how hard it would crash. He sent you a love letter, I said finally. He actually wrote you a damn love letter. Sophia didn't respond right away. Her eyes were distant, like she was trying to replay every moment she'd ever shared with Lucas through a new lens. I had no idea. I know you didn't, I said quickly. Too quickly. This isn't your fault. It's him. He knew. He knew we were engaged. He looked me in the eye and still sent you that. She looked at me then, and I saw the guilt swimming behind her pupils. Not guilt over doing anything wrong, but guilt for being the reason this mess even existed. I never flirted with him, she said quietly. I swear. I know, I said again. But it didn't make me feel better, because it wasn't about whether she encouraged it. It was about the fact that my own brother had crossed a line so deeply etched in the sand that it should have been impossible to miss. I picked up the letter, read it again, this time slower. The words were careful, rehearsed, like he'd read it out loud to himself a dozen times before sealing the envelope. I just needed you to know, even if it changes nothing. Well, he got one thing right, I muttered. Sophia reached for my hand. What are you going to do? I don't know, I said, sitting beside her. But I can't pretend this didn't happen. I won't. That night, I called him. It went to voicemail. I didn't leave one. 2 days passed. 3. I didn't hear from him. It felt surreal, like we were characters in a bad soap opera. I half expected him to show up at our door, roses in hand, offering some grand, misguided apology. But he didn't. Instead, he posted something on social media, a blurry photo of the Seattle skyline at night. The caption, "Some things are worth losing everything for." The comments were vague, filled with heart emojis and okay, messages. I didn't reply. I didn't even like the post, but it made something inside me twist. What exactly did he think he was losing? Me, his sister, or the fantasy he'd built in his head where Sophia was the missing piece to his broken puzzle? 3 more days passed before I got a text. Lucas, can we talk? My fingers hovered over the screen. For a moment, I thought about ignoring him, ghosting him the way he'd ghosted boundaries, ghosted the version of me that trusted him without condition. But I agreed. We met at a cafe near Green Lake, neutral ground. I arrived early, sat by the window, and watched the wind stir the surface of the water in the distance. He showed up late. He looked rough, hollow, like someone who hadn't slept properly in days. He sat down across from me, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. Then he broke the silence. I'm sorry, it wasn't enough, but it was a start. For what? Exactly, I asked, voice even. He sighed. For the letter. For what I said? For everything. I studied him, This wasn't the cocky, charming Lucas I'd grown up with. This was someone stripped bare. You didn't just cross a line, I said. You shattered it. I know. She's not yours to want. I know. I let the silence stretch between us. Let it weigh heavy. He rubbed his temples. I've been spiraling for a while. Eli, you've got your life together. Your career. Your home. Sophia. And I'm 30. Broke. Living in a basement studio. No direction. Every time I saw you two together, it just... He paused. It made me feel like I was disappearing. That doesn't excuse what you did. I know that, too. I leaned back in my chair, folded my arms. So what do you want now? Forgiveness. A clean slate. I don't know what I want. I just didn't want to lose you. He looked up at me then, eyes bloodshot and earnest. I messed up. But you're my sister. I don't want this to be the end. And for the first time, I felt the tide shift. Not in forgiveness, but in clarity. I love you, I said. You're my brother, but you made choices that hurt me. That hurt Sophia, and just saying sorry doesn't fix that. He nodded. I get it. I need time, I continued. And space. A lot of it. He opened his mouth, closed it again, then said, okay. We sat there for a few more minutes, sipping lukewarm coffee and pretending like something hadn't just fractured between us. And then I left. When I got home, Sophia was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner. She turned when I walked in, her eyes searching mine. How was it? I wrapped my arms around her from behind, rested my chin on her shoulder. Hard, but honest. She exhaled, long and low. Are we going to be okay? I pressed a kiss to her neck. We already are, but deep down, I knew the aftershocks hadn't hit yet. That the real test wasn't just surviving betrayal, it was learning how to rebuild in its wake. It wasn't immediate. Healing never is. There's no magical line you cross where everything suddenly makes sense again. It comes in slow waves, sometimes too slow to notice, between cups of tea, long silences, and quiet touches at 2 a.m., when sleep won't come. After I talked to Lucas, I thought things would settle, that with distance and time, maybe we could find a way back to being siblings, even if the version of us that existed before was gone forever. But life had other plans. It started with my mom. She called me 2 days later, her voice tight with restrained emotion. Lucas came by, she said. Of course he did. He told me everything, she continued. About the letter, about his feelings, about your reaction. I stayed silent, bracing for the inevitable. Elena, he's hurting. I scoffed before I could stop myself. He's hurting. He tried to insert himself into my relationship like it was some twisted fairy tale. He knows it was wrong. He's been crying every night, barely eating. And what about me? Mom, have you asked how I'm doing? She went quiet. Do you have any idea how it felt to read that letter? To watch Sophia look at me like she was the one who needed to apologize. Elena, honey, he's your brother. Exactly. He is my brother, not some stranger off the street. He knew better. There was a pause. Then, carefully, she said, you know, maybe this is why he feels so alone. That one sentence sliced through me like a blade. I hung up. I stood in the middle of the living room for a long time after that, clutching my phone, every nerve in my body buzzing. Sophia found me like that, frozen, shoulders tense, eyes wide. What happened? She asked gently. My mother thinks this is my fault, I said. That Lucas is spiraling because I won't sweep this under the rug and just pretend everything's fine. Sophia reached for me, and I let her pull me in. Let the warmth of her arms remind me that not everything was broken. Maybe it's not about fault, she said softly. Maybe it's just about boundaries. I looked at her. You're not angry at him. Oh, I'm furious, she said, and the fire in her eyes told me she meant it. But I also know grief when I see it. And Lucas, he's grieving a fantasy he built around me, around us. That doesn't excuse it, but it explains part of it. Her words made sense in a way that made me feel even more exhausted. I don't want to spend my engagement juggling other people's emotional baggage, I muttered. Then don't, she said simply. Let them carry their own. And just like that, I decided we needed to disappear for a while. A week later, we took a trip to the coast. Just the two of us. Moose the cat reluctantly in tow, sulking in his carrier. We rented a tiny cottage that smelled faintly of salt and old pine, and for the first time in what felt like months, I breathed. We walked on the beach. We drank cheap wine and danced barefoot in the kitchen. We lay in bed late into the mornings, our limbs tangled, hearts beating in sync again. But even in those perfect moments, the ghost of Lucas lingered at the edge of my thoughts. One night, as we watched the waves roll in under a sky full of stars, Sophia broke the silence. "Do you ever think about cutting him out completely?" The question caught me off guard. I turned to her, surprised. "I mean," she continued, "some people are just not good for us, even if they're family." I hesitated. "I don't know if I'm ready to go that far." "You don't have to decide now," she said, "but you should know. I'll support you either way." I reached for her hand, squeezed it gently. "I love you," she smiled. "Good, because I plan to marry you. Remember." The next morning, I woke up to an email from Lucas. Subject: "Just read." No reply needed. It was long, rambling, a mix of apology, confession, and self-reflection. He told me he was checking into a therapy program, that he'd been dealing with depression for years but never talked about it, that he knew what he did was selfish, that he didn't expect forgiveness but hoped, maybe one day, I could look at him without hate in my eyes. He ended it with this: "You were always the one I looked up to. Elimar, not because you were perfect, but because you were brave enough to live honestly." I'm sorry I tried to take that from you. I didn't reply, not because I was angry, but because I finally understood that this part of our journey needed silence to heal. Words had done enough damage. When we got back from the coast, I felt lighter, stronger, ready to focus on the future again. Sophia and I finalized the wedding date. We sent out invitations. My mom called, hinting about dress fittings and flower arrangements. Acting like everything was back to normal, I let her, for now. Lucas didn't respond to his invitation, and I didn't follow up. Not out of spite, but because sometimes distance is love in disguise. Wedding planning is strange. Everyone tells you it's supposed to be the happiest time of your life, but no one talks about the mental gymnastics you have to perform to keep your sanity intact. Guest lists, seating charts, the florist canceling last minute, and somewhere between the cake tastings and deciding between off-white or ivory, you realize this isn't just about one day. It's about how you want to carry your life forward from that day on. For me, it was also about boundaries. The invitation we'd sent to Lucas hadn't come back. No RSVP, no email, no text. Just silence. I kept telling myself that was okay, that maybe silence was its own kind of answer. But deep down, I couldn't lie. A part of me still hoped he'd show up. Not because I wanted him there, but because I wanted him to care enough to explain why he wouldn't be. My mom asked again the week before the wedding, "Are you sure you don't want me to talk to him?" I was standing in the middle of the bridal boutique, adjusting the hem of my gown. When she brought it up, I looked at her through the mirror and shook my head. "No, Mom, this is between me and him." She pursed her lips, then nodded slowly. "I just hate seeing my children apart." I sighed. "So do I. But I'm not the one who built that wall." She didn't reply, but I could tell she understood. That night, Sophia and I sat on the couch surrounded by wedding to-do lists and fabric swatches. Our cat snuggled between us like some tiny, grumpy wedding planner. She looked up from her notes and said, "Do you want to leave a seat open for him?" I paused. "Honestly, I don't know. I'm okay with whatever you decide," she said. "But this is your day, too. And I want you to feel surrounded by people who love and support us. Not just you." Her words landed with weight. Us. Not just my story anymore. Not just my family. Ours. And in that moment, I realized something. Lucas might be my brother, but Sophia is my family, so I didn't leave a seat open. We printed the final seating chart without his name, and when I looked at it afterward, I didn't feel regret. I felt peace. The wedding day came like a breath of fresh spring air. The sky was impossibly clear. The venue, an old converted greenhouse on the edge of town, was bathed in sunlight and laughter. Guests filled the seats. Music played softly in the background, and the scent of jasmine floated through the air like a memory. I stood with my dad before walking down the aisle. He adjusted my veil, cleared his throat, and whispered, "She's a lucky woman." I smiled. "No, Dad, I'm the lucky one." As the doors opened and I stepped into the aisle, I caught my first glimpse of Sophia standing at the altar. Her smile was everything. Every worry, every betrayal, every wound I had carried up to that moment melted under that gaze. And then, I saw him. In the very back row, Lucas. He wasn't dressed for a wedding. He wore jeans, a jacket too big for him, and a look of quiet apology. I almost stopped walking, but then Sophia reached out her hand, and I kept moving forward. Later, during the reception, I didn't see him. I figured he had left after the ceremony, and truthfully, that would have been enough. But as we stood under the fairy lights during our first dance, someone slipped a note into my maid of honor's hand. She passed it to me with a whisper. It was a torn piece of notebook paper. "You looked beautiful. I didn't come to interrupt. Just needed to see you start the life you deserve. That's all." I folded the note, pressed it into my palm, and let it go. That night, as Sophia and I collapsed onto the hotel bed, still in half our wedding clothes, she looked over at me with that playful grin I adored and said, "So, did anything unexpected happen today?" I smirked. "Besides marrying the most beautiful woman alive." Flattery noted, but I hesitated, then handed her the note. She read it, nodded slowly, and handed it back. "Closure, maybe," I said, "or the start of it." And we didn't talk about Lucas again that night. Instead, we talked about Paris, about maybe getting a dog, about what color we wanted to paint the nursery someday. We talked about the kind of future we could build, brick by brick, without any ghosts in the foundation. And I realized something else. You don't always need everyone's blessing to move on. Sometimes, the best gift people can give you is distance. It's funny how life keeps moving, even when you want it to pause. One day you're waking up with the chaos of wedding planning in your head, and the next you're sipping coffee on your new patio, watching your wife read a book under the morning sun, wondering how something so simple could feel like everything you ever needed. Sophia and I settled into married life like it was always waiting for us. We didn't rush into anything. We didn't make grand resolutions. We just existed, happily, softly, and that was enough. The letter from Lucas stayed folded in the back of my journal for weeks. I didn't read it again. I didn't need to. Sometimes healing doesn't come from confrontation or conversations. It comes from choosing peace over reopening wounds. But healing doesn't mean forgetting. A month after the wedding, I got a message from Lucas. It wasn't long. Just a few lines. "I'm still in therapy. I'm doing better. I'm working part-time at the bookstore down on 9th. I know you're not ready for anything yet. I just wanted you to know I'm trying." I stared at that message for a long time, not because it hurt, but because, for the first time, it didn't. Sophia and I visited the bookstore one day, pretending we didn't know he worked there. He saw us, smiled faintly, and nodded. We nodded back. No words, no scene. Just a quiet acknowledgement between two people who used to share a whole childhood and now only shared space in the same city. And that was enough. My mom still tries to fix things, in her own gentle, misguided way. She sends group texts with funny family memories, hoping one of us will reply to the other. I don't mind. I've stopped seeing it as pressure. I see it as love, in the only way she knows how to offer it. Sophia asked me once, during a quiet evening, "Do you think you'll ever let him fully back in?" I thought about it. About the weight of betrayal, about the cracks it left in my trust, about the shadow it cast on one of the most beautiful moments of my life. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I think I've forgiven him." And I had, not because he deserved it, but because I deserved the peace that came with letting go. Love isn't always about holding on. Sometimes it's about knowing when to release something that's been weighing you down, even if it once meant everything. It's about choosing yourself, your happiness, your safety, even when it feels selfish. Sophia and I kept building our life. We traveled, we got that dog, a floppy-eared rescue named Maple who insists on sleeping between us every night. We laughed more. We argued about whose turn it was to do laundry. We lived. One rainy afternoon, I found an old photo album in the back of a closet. Pictures of Lucas and me as kids, mud-stained cheeks, gap-toothed grins, summer memories frozen in film. I smiled. And I cried a little, too. Because grief doesn't just come when someone dies. Sometimes, it comes when the version of a person you loved no longer exists. But that doesn't mean you stop loving them. You just love them from afar, in your own way, from the safety of your boundaries. And that, I've learned, is still love. Not the messy, painful kind that demands forgiveness or understanding, but the kind that says, I see you, I remember who you were, and I wish you well, even from here. So if you're listening to this, and you've ever had to walk away from someone you once called family, I hope you know it's okay. It doesn't make you cruel. It doesn't make you heartless. It just means you chose peace. And sometimes, that's the bravest kind of love there is. Thanks for tuning in to Reddit Stories. New tales drop daily drama, love, or ghostly glories. Hit like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you won't miss the next story we tell. Got thoughts to share? Drop them below. We read them all just so you know.